Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to this episode of The Invisible Critic. I'm your host, The Invisible Critic from North New Jersey. This is the sub-series, The Forbidden History of the Globalist Conspiracy. This episode, we're coming back to the young United States, the farewell address of George Washington, 1796. He served 2 full terms as president, and he declined a 3rd term. And he issued an historic address. Actually, it was a written speech, Washington's farewell address. I got a link down below. That's your homework assignment. Amazing historical document. He issues warnings and prophecies. He says, he cautions to avoid the formation of political parties. He says in time that cunning, ambitious scoundrels will take them over and work against the interest of the nation. He warns against running up big deficits. He stresses the importance of religion and morality so you don't have a degenerate people, because a degenerate people cannot maintain liberty. Okay, he warns against foreign entanglements and on and on. Basically, everything you see going on today, Washington more than 200 years ago, he warned against doing. And when he stepped down, he was such a respected, heroic figure that he kind of kept everything together. But when he stepped down, the factions broke out into open warfare, and those parties did begin to form. So you had the Federalist faction, and then you had the Democratic Republican faction, it was called. And basically, you had one, the Federalists were pro-central bank, a little stronger government, bigger government, pro-Britain, and then the other faction was more libertarian. They saw more agricultural, small-town America was their vision. So it's kind of Jefferson versus Hamilton. And this conflict of vision is kind of still going on today. Now, speaking of Hamilton, 1 year prior to Washington stepping down after 2 terms, in 1795, this son of a bitch and bastard, Alexander Hamilton, he was forced to resign from his position as the Secretary of Treasury over something called the Maria Reynolds affair. He's banging another guy's wife. And this is in the 1790s. That's big back then. And the guy's wife finds out, starts blackmailing Hamilton. And when this came out, he's finished. I mean, it's a different moral code back then. You know, today nobody cares if you cheat, if you're a homewrecker, if you're freaking queer. It don't matter. But back then, it was done. So, let's see. Now we go to 1800, the election of 1800, Adams versus Jefferson. Okay, these are the 2 factions. Adams was a Federalist, Jefferson was Democrat, Republican. John Adams was a good man, don't get me wrong, okay? He wasn't like a traitor like that freaking Hamilton. He hated Hamilton, as a matter of fact. But he did have a different vision. He was more bigger government, pro-central government than Jefferson was. What else we got here? Oh, we fast forward a bit here. A duel. Now, later on, Adams serves 1 term, then Thomas Jefferson becomes president. There's a duel between Jefferson's vice president, Aaron Burr, challenges Alexander Hamilton to a duel. It's right here in New Jersey, in Weehawken. So even though Hamilton's out of the picture, he's still talking trash. A lot of people hated that son of a bitch. Burr, who was an anti-federalist, challenged Hamilton to a duel and killed him. So thank you, Aaron Burr. And would you believe he goes back to being vice president and he finishes out his term? It's a different world back then. Now, back to the issue at hand, the War of 1812. We go to 1811. The charter of the original central bank in the United States, privately owned scam, similar to today's Federal Reserve. The charter expired, so they had to vote to renew it for 20 more years. In the Senate, they tied. And when you tie, the tie-breaking vote goes to the vice president. This was Madison's vice president, George Clinton, who, like Madison, was against the central bank. He was anti-federalist, and he cast the tie-breaking vote. And he killed the central bank. That was huge, because it was a tie. And all of a sudden, the British start messing with us. How convenient. Now, mind you, by this time, Rothschild, he owns freaking Britain, right? You saw the previous episode, how the British had to crawl to finance and beg for financing from Rothschild in order to beat Napoleon. So you had the British Rothschild alliance. The United States says no to the central bank, and look what they start doing, the British. They start kidnapping American sailors aboard American ships. It's called impressment. They would stop these ships at sea, and if there was anyone that they said was a British subject, they'd basically kidnap them and force them into the Navy. No respect for the young United States. And then there was here's a massacre here at Duck River. The Indians was doing massacres, okay? Oh, these gentle indigenous people. A lot of them was murderous savages, but it was the British who was paying them, the British who was inciting them and propping them up. So, you know, they played dirty, the British. In war, they'd fight like gentlemen, ready, aim, fire. But down low, they would get the Indians to do massacres against the Americans. They would even pay for scalps. Okay? There's even a line in the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson speaks of the murderous Indian savages and how the British were using them to wage war. It's true. That's how they did it. Now, in May of 1812, the Prime Minister of Britain, his name is Spencer Perceval, reasonable man. He's on his way to a meeting, and they want to diffuse tensions so they could avoid a war with the United States. And on his way to the meeting, this assassin named John Bellingham walks up to him, and bada bing! It kills him. How convenient. And now Percival is dead. The warmongers start whipping up a war frenzy. They're still fighting Napoleon, mind you, and now they want to go and crush the United States. And like a few weeks after that, the War of 1812 broke out. With the death of the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister of Britain, who's a relatively new Foreign Minister, he was Robert Stewart, also known as Lord Casterly, he's probably the most influential man now in terms of foreign affairs. He was key at the Congress of Vienna. He was behind the conspiracy to try to assassinate Napoleon. And now he wants to make war with the United States too. Okay, so this is a bad guy. And in 1821, he ends up committing suicide. You know why? Because the word got out that he was a Finocchio, he was a queer, he takes it in the back, and back then that was, forget about it. People found out you get prosecutors against the law. So what does he do? People find out he's queer. He slit his own throat in 1821. So these are the kind of people that waged war against Napoleon and waged war against the young United States in 1812. This is basically the same war. The British imperialists want the United States back, and the Rothschilds want the central bank. Here's another massacre. Fort Mims, Alabama. Horrible, horrible. They stormed the fort, the Indians, and they scalped and they butchered women and children. It's the British were behind this. This is how British Rothschilds, that's how they operate. 1814, the Allies reach Paris. That's the end of Napoleon. Of course, he later escapes exile, comes back, and there's another 100 Days War. But this was a key event because now the British, the warmongers of Britain and the British press are saying, okay, we're done with Napoleon. Let's send the whole freaking force to the United States. We'll get the colonies back. And a lot of people in Britain had that opinion at the time. In the United States, you know, people were scared. The British, August 1814, they burned down the White House. This is the Rothschild British did this. They burned down the freaking White House. Fortunately, there was still a lot of people in Britain who were just sick of the war. These Napoleonic wars, they call them, the coalition wars, they're going on for like 20 years, and you get the War of 1812. Merchants was losing money. The people were upset because of their taxes are through the roof to pay for the war. So December 1814, the Treaty of Ghent ends the War of 1812. Actually, the War of 1812, the 1814. But the British were still in a position of strength when they approved that treaty. Okay? Now, it takes like 6 to 8 weeks for word to get from Europe back to the United States. So that treaty, even though it was a peace treaty, it could not stop the Battle of New Orleans from happening. The British tried to take New Orleans. They would have choked up the Mississippi River, cut the United States in two. The great General Andrew Jackson stopped the British, and he became an American legend. Now, the fake historians say that the Battle of New Orleans didn't have to be fought. It was a waste because they'd already signed the peace treaty. Nah, because the British are famous for breaking their treaties. If they'd have won that battle, they would have just kept going. They would have tore up the treaty again, just like they tore up the Treaty of Amiens that they made with Napoleon. They don't honor their treaties, the British Rothschild. They don't honor treaties. They use treaties as strategic ploys to buy time, regroup, and make more alliances. So this was a key event in American history. And the great General Andrew Jackson, years later, would become president, and he would kill the central bank. We'll do a whole episode on that. But the war ends. And not long after that, February 16th, Second Central Bank of the United States rechartered. the Senate passed it, and Madison, who had always opposed it since the founding of the Republic, he goes along with it. Why? You see what happened? The first charter expired, they didn't renew, boom, the British wage war. Then the war ends, and boom, we get the bank back. So it's almost as like the young United States didn't have a choice. We got to get the central bank just to keep British Rothschild off our freaking back. And that's the true story of the War of 1812. So now, you know, make sure you check out my links below, share this video, subscribe, and throw me a few shekels if you could with the Patreon and the GoFundMe links before so I can make more videos. But on the next episode, we're going to go back to Europe, and we're going to take a look at what's going on in the 1820s. So, thanks for stopping by. This is the Invisible Critic signing off.